Keith mentioned earlier that our institute has a partnership council. And on our partnership council, we bring together different members of different theological traditions from across the country who can provide some insight and input for us as an institute, but also vice versa. Hence, we talk about this as a partnership in ways in which we might mutually enrich one another in different organizational standpoint and perspective. And what we've asked of two members from our council to draw our day to a conclusion is to bring some reflections on the day today. An exercise we've called a weaving exercise to weave together some of the key ideas. And so Carla, Leon, and Don Moore, there we go. Carla is the manager of new initiatives for EDGE at the United Church of Canada, serves on our partnership council. And Don Moore is the global church ambassador for Gideon's International in Canada. We've asked them to concisely, whatever that's a vague term, relative term, we'll entrust you to share just a few insights that the two of you stand out to you after our day together. So we'll hear from you and then carry from there.
This is going to be very, very organized, I promise. No, we haven't planned at all, so we'll see how this goes. We did have one pre-conversation, which was a lot of fun. I came up with this really, really great idea that we should encapsulate what the themes are. And Don had this really, really great idea that we should just go through the good, the bad, and the questions, or the unexpected. So guess what? He did the themes, and I did the good and the bad. So Don.
Yeah, we changed roles here. You know, it's interesting this morning, as we came together, I thought, how do you pull the good, the bad, the unexpected, the questions? And then I thought, you know, maybe the best thing is just to take some detailed notes. So I took bullet point notes of each of the speakers, and I've done that throughout the day. And what I found fascinating is that as I filtered those and kind of kept going back and scrolling through the pages, I saw 4 themes that came out pretty clearly. And I'm going to share those 4 themes, and I don't want to expound on each theme, you've heard it today, but I will make a quote from each of the speakers that I've noticed that would show you how that theme became so significant and important. And some of these line up with the research that we're doing as an institute. Some are maybe a little broader than that, but I think they're quite significant. So listen as I just share these 4. First of all, the priority of community engagement. In other words, knowing your community. Pastor Jeremy talked about knowing your community, that place is important, understanding needs. He also went on to say that it's important to bring the diversity of your community, quote, into your congregation. Remember the illustration he used of changing the leadership mix, and that ultimately changed the congregation? Significant. I saw that happen in another church where they changed the mix of the worship team because it's a very large church and most people didn't know who all the leadership team was. They weren't on the platform, but the worship team was. And that church in the last 2 years has changed dramatically just because of that. Then Reverend John talked about, think about who's not in the church, not just who's in the church, and who will be there 10 years from now. And then April, Pastor April mentioned how she helped her German congregation engage in the community around them and gradually transition that whole mindset of German thinking, or whatever cultural thinking it might be in your church, to a much broader and more inclusive understanding of the community. The second theme that I found was the importance of clarity of purpose or mission. And I thought it was interesting. Father Jerome talked about focusing on the bigger goal because it's so easy sometimes to become fragmented with our ministries and become kind of a master or diverse so much of that what's the expression say, master of all, or anyways, the whole idea that sometimes you really don't have it together at all because you're doing too much, you're too diverse. Reverend John Penland also talked about the importance of defining core values, defining your borders so you know when to refer people to other churches and when to retain people and to encourage them to adopt your values. And then finally, Pastor Jeremy talked about the expression, know why you exist, who you are, what you do, and why you do it. So the clarity of purpose or mission. Then thirdly, is an interesting one, the character of leadership. Father Jerome started off this morning talking about the importance of authenticity. And I heard that numerous times throughout our conversation, not just by him, but by others. And then Reverend April, she talked about building relationships through trust, collaboration, Archbishop Don Boland just talked about the importance of dialogue, collaboration, modeling what I would probably term as listen, learn, and lead. Leaders in the past years ago had the position of authority in the community so they could just lead. But nowadays we don't have that, so we have to listen. We need to learn and be in a better posture to lead. And then finally, John Pentland, said, let's move our leadership, help our leadership to move our congregations beyond their comfort zones. And that's going to happen as we as leaders go beyond our comfort zone. And just as the panel just talked about now a few minutes ago, the importance of going beyond our own boundaries in an ecumenical sense and being willing to build those relationships. Modeling that will certainly impress the truth of that on our congregations. And then the final one was one that Father Jerome mentioned first thing this morning, and that was the creation of spiritual experiences that deeply touch the heart. Experience in the transcendence, to be renewed in spirituality. And probably one phrase that I won't forget, and many of you probably won't either, but John Pentland mentioned at the end, the importance of horizontal transcendence, the evidence of God amongst us, and seeing God amongst our people. So those are the 4 themes. I trust that helps to bring together some clarity from your day, as it did mine.
So now, the good, the things to work upon, so the bad, and then the unexpected. So the good, I was really, really excited to find out today that 50% of our members are actually within 50 kilometers. Wow. That really reinforces that we are place-based and how important that is. The other one that was really exciting is just to hear about how change happens with relationships, with conversations, that theme. And so what this sprung upon me was that change happens at the speed of trust. Change happens at the pace of relationship. Then the things to work upon. It was really, really clear that evangelizing needs work. It's something that is so important for flourishing congregations. It's something that we saw as really a leading indicator. So evangelism, and yes, I'm with United Church of Canada, and I'm saying evangelism is important. So what I found really interesting about this, well, what Reverend April indicated to us, is that really, church, our faith, it is a big secret still. And one of our newest employees that we have at United Church of Canada, when he first started, he started finding out more and more about church. He goes, this is really cool, actually. And he said, it's kind of like kettle chips. I'm like, what are you talking about, kettle chips? He's like, you know, when you start having kettle chips, you're not going to go back. So it's almost an ethical dilemma for us, it started to make me think today, that we have to talk about our faith. So evangelism, it's not bad, it's good. And then the unexpected. Rule is where it's at. Rule, guess what? We already have the relationships in place. So if change is about the pace of relationships, if the change that we're talking about here, if knowing your neighbor is important, well, guess what? In a rural community, a real rural community, so that's under $20,000 as per Stats Canada, then we already know the neighbors. So there's a huge opportunity there that really we should be looking at. And then one of my favorite quotes was, may you live in interesting times. And we definitely are living in those interesting times. So the last piece I thought was going to be a question, and I was hearing, like, what is a flourishing congregation? I think we've really started to dig into that, and we all have our own definitions. So instead of leaving you with a question, I would love to leave you with an action. We've talked so much about partnerships, and partnerships and those conversations start in this room. So I would challenge you, because I think we're actually a little bit early by 2 minutes. If you could actually turn to the people on your table and the conversations you've already had, I challenge you to make a covenant of an action that you are willing to take in partnership with each other.